with my immediate right. I was going to say His Excellency, but someone might send a shoe my way. On my immediate right is Dominic Grammaticus. Dominic is the CEO of Governor's Balloons Safaris. That's probably the smallest part of his business. Dominic has more than 30 years experience in managing, establishing, operating tourism businesses, camps, lodges in East Africa. And he's probably one of the leading experts in tourism business in the region. Dominic, welcome. Good. Next to Dominic is, I come from those Bantu languages. So I was going to say Hubert, but I think it's Hube Golei. Did I get it right? Okay, quite close. Okay, that's like a B+. So he's the Vice President, Transactions and Advisory at HTI Consulting. Very good nuggets of wisdom, especially around tourism and transactions in Africa. Third, probably very key, and you will not make money unless you understand what he says today. In any lodge, safari camp, or tented camp, is Mr. Dixon Kailo. Mr. Dixon Kailo is the CEO of the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association. He represents 215, I got it right? Yes, 215 private and community conservancies across Kenya, which it's interesting. The total land mass they occupy is about 12.5% of Kenya's land. So you better listen to him. And last but not least, this name I'll massacre. No, I can't. I'll say Kevin T. The T is difficult. I don't know. Let's just hear how it's pronounced. Oh, good.
Tiruvengadam. It's as simple as the circuit in MARA.
Did anyone get it? So Kevin has been in the industry as well for a long time. He's been a board director in tourism. He's worked as an advisor for investors in lodges, camps. He has a lot of experience in the space for tourism operators, and therefore he's going to be a key part of the discussion. I want to start from a big picture perspective before we get into the details. And Zorava knows me. I think we have 30 minutes. My 30 minutes are usually, Kenyan time, probably 45 minutes. So big picture perspective. And Dominic, you've been involved in the industry for 30 years. Ran very successful businesses. And when I say that, I know it personally, having known Dominic for almost 19 years. What are the strategic imperatives for investors in in businesses that operate in places like the Mara and the Serengeti. When you talk about a safari business, what strategic imperatives do you think investors in that industry should know or have in their minds? Go ahead.
Alex, thank you very much. It's a tale of two halves, actually. The positive and the negative. On the positive side, the industry is in Kenya and East Africa widely is amazingly diverse. We think of tourism in Kenya as really being the safari and beach kind of core, but it's really much bigger than that. I mean, there's a huge diversity of experiences here. We've got all sorts of geographies. We've got high mountains, we've got deserts, we've got rainforests, we've got amazing beaches, and within that there are all categories of other tourism products. For example, adventure tourism is growing very strongly in Kenya, with mountain-based tourism, cycling, running with athletes, some of Kenya's world-class athletes, birding. Kenya's a world-class destination. We're a travel hub here. You can get into other parts of the region and do amazing things like gorilla trekking in Rwanda. And that kind of diversity is driving real growth. Eleni was talking about the growth in tourism numbers and hospitality worldwide, but we're really seeing it in Kenya. 2023, the tourism numbers, the arrivals were around 2 million last year, perhaps 2.4, and projected to grow close to 3 million arrivals this year. So some real serious growth and some serious opportunities, but there are also some problems.
Yes.
So a couple of those just to think about. People don't really consider infrastructure constraints, but if numbers are going to be growing like that into this region, things like Jomo Kenyatta, Wilson Airport are really going to become choke points and in need of serious investment. Legal frameworks are really growing nicely in Kenya. The Kenya government has put together excellent strategic plans covering the next 5 or 10 years. And subsidiary legislation is really coming in strongly. So Tourism Regulatory Authority is now managing the sector well, and the industry is organizing itself very well. You're going to hear a lot about that from Dixon, perhaps. But also investor associations are coming up. One of the other issues, Alex, just quickly to touch on is saturation, destination saturation. So some of our key destinations are really under pressure. I'm thinking really of the Mara and Amboseli, where numbers are high, and that's an issue for people to really think about. The other pressure that they're under is demographic pressure. So population growth and resource requirements are putting protected areas under pressure. So investors need to really think carefully about what those pressures are and how to manage them. But this, coming back to this idea of diversity, that's the key to solving some of these problems. If we're able to push tourism development into other areas which are not quite so well heavily utilized, then there's capacity and opportunity for growth. And there's an exciting future ahead, I think, if we can utilize some of those opportunities.
Interesting. Yeah, how many of you know which is the busiest light craft airports in Africa? Yeah, man. I do a lot of work in conservation, so I'm always in those light, scary aircrafts. And you put on do they call them headphones? And the moment you get closer to Wilson, my God, your ears, because the number of people who are talking to each other, number of people talking to the ATC, number of planes talking to each other is just out of this world. So if you know a good airport developer whose name doesn't start with an A, those are the kind of investments we need, because the safari business relies almost 99.99% in Kenya on Wilson Airport. So if you want to go to the MARA, you'll probably get your flight from Wilson. Not Wilson, the person, Wilson Airport. Which then is probably a nice segue for me to ask Kevin, do you think, I mean, is the MARA the only safari destination in Kenya? I mean, everyone wants to come to the MARA. And when they talk about MARA, they actually talk about the MARA Triangle, which is the Masai Mara National Reserve. But actually, MARA is much bigger than that. Is that all Kenya has to offer? Kevin?
I'm sure you know you have far more than MARA, but I think I always like to look at data because very often, unfortunately, we're very much driven by anecdotal evidence. If you look at the data last year globally, 1.5 billion people actually qualified as tourists globally, 1.5 billion. When you look at the statistics in East Africa, let's say Kenya, for example, take Kenya as an example, the 2.2 million visitors are not tourists, right?
The visitors.
Whenever I come here, I fill in my ETF form, I come for business or a meeting, they put me as tourist, and it goes into that statistics. My count is real tourists, people who actually book, pay to come and visit, whether it's Mara or the beach,
Yep.
etc.
Yep.
My thing is, it's probably around 600,000, 700,000. Right? Now, if you look at East Africa, your neighbor next door, TZ, Tanzania, if you exclude Zanzibar, Zanzibar is around 600, 700,000. But when it comes to the bush in Tanzania, they're probably around, real tourists is around 1 million. The whole of East Africa, which includes Uganda, Rwanda, etc., lumping together, is probably around 4 million max, right? Including Zanzibar, etc., right? So when you look at that on a global scale, we're not even 1%. We're actually 0.01%. So that gives you the real scale of opportunities. And I'll come back, I'll say what I do believe, having looked at a couple of acquisitions in East Africa and comparing. Now, if you're sitting in New York or London or Paris or Frankfurt, your distribution channel is very much through the tour operators, right? Whether you go to the beach in Diani for 7 nights or you go to the bush, it's the tour operators, right? When you speak to the tour operators, somebody who's deciding to come to Africa, excluding Egypt and Morocco and whatnot, sub-Saharan Africa, the first thing that comes to mind is the big five, right? You unpack the big five, South Africa comes number 1, Tanzania comes number 2, top of mind, and MARA comes number 3, not even Kenya, by the way, as a jurisdiction.
It's MARA,
right?
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that because it's very easy for me to come and say, you know, everything is great and we're doing well, etc.
Yes.
I see the potential. The potential of Kenya is 10x, far more than what that this country is doing, right? And I do believe that potential will be unleashed because I'm seeing consolidation in the market, which will bring international brands, which will also bring sophisticated investors. And I'm also seeing basically global value chain looking for acquisition in this market, which will eventually change that dynamic, right? Now, having said that, if you look at Kenya, it's not just the MARA. I mean, you guys have got, I wish other jurisdictions, I come from Mauritius, right? I wish we had 10% of what you guys have, honestly. You've got the beach, you've got a fantastic city, you've got the lake, you've got the tea plantation, you've got the bush, you've got the desert, you've got the rivers. I mean, you've got the mountains. Can you tell me something that you don't have, for God's sake, right? You've got everything. So my issue is about Kenya needs to package itself better. Communicate itself better.
Marketing.
In 2025, when you go to the US or UK, etc., strangely, you guys are still on travel alert. Gosh. I mean, when was the last terror attack in Kenya? 10 years ago. So these kind of things needs to be worked out by the authorities, obviously public and private sector, to lobby these embassies, etc., to take you off terror alerts, right? Which your next door neighbor doesn't have that problem. Tanzania doesn't have that problem. Right now, it's the flavor of the month in terms of investment,
Yep.
in terms of tourism arrivals, in terms of hotels development and lodges development, etc. So that's why when I see at that, I say there's so much potential, and I do believe it's going to happen.
Yes.
I do agree. I mean, the airport, you don't even have to start with Wilson. I landed yesterday, and it was great to see people from first class and business class getting down and going up the stairs, getting lost somewhere. And eventually I was the tour guide because I've been here many times, right?
So you told them it's this
I
way.
told them how to get out, etc., right? So definitely your airport needs to be structured better.
Yeah.
And then your marketing needs to be much, much better. I mean, for me, Kenya has got all the ingredients. It's just how you package it and get it off there. And obviously the value chain needs to be sorted out as well.
Good. Thank you, Kevin. It's amazing. I didn't know there's a country called MARA until today. I've seen clients, many clients, sophisticated clients. They no longer come for a stay in the MARA or a stay at the beach. They want a circuit experience. So they land in Nairobi, they'll go to the park, they'll go to northern Kenya, they'll go to the beach, they'll then go back to far northern Kenya in some of the community conservancies up there that Dixon very well knows. And they'll have a 2-week experience, some of which will include 3 days riding on a camel moving from one conservancy to another. So those are the kind of sophisticated tourists we attract. But very few people know that. Everyone thinks we're all going to see the wildebeests in the MARA. Then you get there, you see a lot of green cars and fewer wildebeests. Every year there are fewer. Every year there is fewer. Concentration, which is something Dominic raised. There's far too many in my personal view. Tourism businesses in the MARA area. And that means you get lower wildlife coming in. If you have lower wildlife, the product goes down. So my question to Dixon Kaelo, as the CEO of the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association. There is the MARA National Park, MARA National Reserve rather. But then around it, there are very many private and community conservancies. Could you speak to us about it and just enlighten us about the dynamics there and what investors need to know or understand about that?
Thank you very much, Alex. And basically going to build on what Dominic and Kevin have already shared. And I think Eleni made this even easier for us by describing the current trends and what tourist what tourist interests are going forward, and especially as influenced by the COVID pandemic. I think the big challenge around crowding is a situation that has been created by the assumptions that populations of wildlife best work in areas without people and in areas that are protected, which represent 16.4% of Africa's space. What that basically means is we have over-concentrated our effort in the smaller part of Africa and ignored the fact that wildlife, elephants, rhino, and everything else move over much larger areas, including areas outside of the protected areas. In Kenya, we have only 8% of our landscape, of our landmass under protection. And that's where we are driving our tourism. And no wonder then we get into situations where some of our spaces are overdeveloped as a result. And so we forget that in the rest of Africa, and so is in Kenya and Uganda and many other African countries, more than 60% of the big five and the many animals that tourists want to see are not in protected areas. And so we are not generally investing in this place where we have more wildlife in Africa and so in Kenya. In the Mara, the population of wildlife move over large distances. The protected area is less than 10% of the total area used by the resident migration, which is one of the less talked about migration, but also the areas that are used by elephants. And so everyone is concentrating over this small space, ignoring the fact that there is all this additional area that we need to think about. So I think my point is we need to think beyond the protected areas and think into areas that are occupied by people and even change our mindset from sort of the understanding that wildlife only occur in areas which are protected. In the Mara in 2022, when Kenya Wildlife Service did their census, 82% of the wildlife were not in the park.
Outside the
yet
park.
we are concentrating on the smaller areas. So really we need to think about how do we bring investment into areas outside. It was challenging about 30 years ago when land around the Masai Mara was privatized, and there was a big concern both from government, from private sector, that these areas were going to be fenced and they will go away. And because of a few investors who dare to think about taking some bigger risk that they normally would, they went out and started engaging communities, established the first conservancy, 24,000 acres, 3 tourism facilities, small immersive experiences, as was described, and generating income then that will justify to the landowners why they shouldn't convert those areas into farmlands. And with that, the area under the reserve today has been more than doubled. The reserve is 1510 square kilometers. Areas adjacent is over 1,700 square kilometers. 50 tourism operators are investing there and generating for the community alone $7.5 million. And so there is less risk that those areas will convert into non-conservation land uses. And so and that's really across the country, the idea will be also to think about high biodiversity hotspots that are not protected and bringing investment that is patient, that is willing to take some level of risk to create a partnership where communities are helped to establish institutions and contracts are signed to allow for flow of revenue from tourism into the community, so that then tourism and conservation are more linked and one is supporting the other.
Excellent. Thank you, Dixon. It's an interesting thing because if you have international brands, and like in the Mara, I think there's a Kempinski. What other international brands are there in the Mara? Marriott is there? Excellent. Most of them are also in New York City, aren't they? Right? So my question is, and again this is to Dixon, the tourism businesses in Kenya, as Dominic was enlightening earlier, it started as small family businesses, 5, 6, 7, 10 beds, became a bit more corporate. Then they were acquired by some international tourism operators, and then now we're in a phase where these big names are coming into the safari business in the Mara. Serengeti, and in other places. Dixon, these people from New York, do they understand how to do business? How to do safari business with my Maasai citizens in Narok, in Transmara? And because you work with a lot of these community conservancies and also private conservancies, I mean, what are the points you'd like to highlight that are key to make sure that relationship, sophisticated New York investor, and the person in Narok, they need to have some synergies. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because it's something that we confront every day. I think most Kenyans will remember the story of Shompole Lodge, which one morning was a very successful enterprise, was running well, was attracting good business, and one morning community wakes up and burns it down. That is just one of the several examples of how things can go wrong if the right mindset is not put in place, either by the community or the investor. It is really a question of understanding what the interest of the investor and what's the interest of the community. And I think often approaching it as a transactional enterprise where profits is the driver is one step to begin to fail.
Correct.
The pastoralists have their own reasons why they want to establish conservancies. In many cases, it's not even the money. It's because they are lacking some essential services. The school is not developed, the water point is not there, and the health center is not working. It may be because they want more grass for their livestock, and because they are overgrazing the land, they want the conservancy as an institution for managing grass. And so that needs to come to the equation, and I think the investors needs to spend a lot more time and effort to really understand what is the motivation for the community. And again, the community is not one homogeneous group. So by just talking to a few leaders, you really don't get into the true nuance of what are the issues. You need to spend time, you need to build trust, and you need almost to act in their interest so that they then can act in the interest of the investment. It's also a question of time. It's not a conservancy is not one of the places where you can go in, build a lodge and operate within 6 months or 8 months. It takes time. And so, and really this is why we also need to do a lot more education to impact investment, to provide a little bit more patience for the recipients of funding that are going into community-based conservation. It's also a question of distribution of the benefit and the perception thereof. Because there are always, in any community, gatekeepers. There is possibilities of elite capture. There are people who are maybe more educated, maybe more accessible, maybe speak better English than the average community member. And always being, sort of not just being an investor, but also being one of the stakeholders that is interested in every community member in there, and always acting beyond supporting the community, so to sometimes raise their voices when there is biased arrangements. It's also mostly about contractual. A lot of the contractuals are done by the lawyers of the investor, and they may not, maybe they don't have the time to invest in really understanding the issues, and so they develop an agreement that perhaps work for the investor, but maybe not for the community, and then you create this imbalance. Or sometimes it may even be perceptions, because there is not adequate awareness on the contracting. So, there has to be a lot more thought in designing this program. But
Yeah.
I think, again, we see more and more that when that is done, there is also high chance of success.
Yeah.
Then you can create more products,
Yes.
more experiences. You can
Yes.
create culture.
Yes.
You can do walking with the herders. You can walk with the rangers. You can do your camels. Because unlike a national park where the rules are 6 to 6, and you must not do these 25 things, in a conservancy you can actually curate the experience that you want to offer.
Yeah.
And as long as you observe your safety,
Yeah.
you can actually make it more interesting to your visitors.
Good, good. Thank you very much. I will segue very quickly to Hubei. But before I do that, in a nutshell, because I've been involved in a lot of these transactions with communities, most investors come in as capitalists. If you want to make money in the safari business, 50% of you has to be an extreme socialist, because you have to invest in your communities. If you don't invest in your communities, the capitalist side will collapse. And I think that's more or less what Dixon is saying. Talking about grass, in Kenya, we have nice deserts in Namibia. And primates in Uganda, and also in Rwanda. And Hubei will give us a perspective that is more Africa-wide. And my question to him, as we talk about Mara and Serengeti, is what do you think are the threats or competition that the Mara and Serengeti is going to face, in addition to all those other challenges we've talked about?
Thanks, Alex. No, as this panel said, there's definitely a lot of opportunities beyond the Mara within Tanzania and Kenya. But there's also a few threats, and I think there's three. I'll be quick because I don't think we have much time.
Yeah.
But there's one external threat that is within actually the same circuit, because the highest spending circuit at the moment is you do the gorillas in Rwanda, you do the migration, and then you go to Seychelles. So Rwanda has been actively pushing the RGB, etc., for developing their own Big Five experience in Akagera, which is a magnificent Big Five zone where you can see them in the first safari day, and Dominic can talk a bit more about that. So they're trying to eat away a bit the market shares. Then on the other side, you have the Seychelles, which has just opened some islands for development right next to Altabra, which is the second largest atoll in the whole world. So it's a conservation hotspot. So they're doing their own internal circuits, focusing a bit more on conservation and trying to take away from mainland Africa. So those, of course, I mean, Tanzania and Kenya are doing the same, trying to do their own internal beach and bush circuit, which I think the next panel is going to talk about. But you have, within the circuit, the other people trying to take some market shares, other countries. Then the second threat would be, and as Kevin said, I mean, when you talk about Big Five, the first that comes to mind is Kruger Park and South Africa. So you have that second big circuit in the south, which is South Africa, which has iconic Table Mountain, for example, Zimbabwe Big Falls, Zambia Big Falls. They are like very important to the American markets, the highest spending markets.
Yeah.
They have much better connectivity than Kenya, direct United Delta from both Cape Town and Johannesburg. And you have Botswana that is pushing a lot. Singita is opening their first property there in May in 1 year.
Yeah.
Their second property in May 27, and the third property in May 28, all in the Delta.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the Delta, which was always seen as very high end, is pushing a lot more in the more affordable segments. So that's gonna be head on with Serengeti and the Mara. So those those are really, I think, spaces to watch. And
Yep.
the third threat, which is maybe a bit further down the line, is, I mean, everyone who's traveled in Africa knows it's a huge country, a huge continent.
Yes. Don't worry, it happens to a lot of international experts.
That was quite bad. Sorry. No, it's a huge continent. So there's a lot of actually big five parks
Yeah.
that are run by African parks that are
Yeah.
really very well run
Yeah.
in West Africa.
Yeah.
For example, in Chad, you have Zakuma that is. You talk to any guides in the Serengeti that has done also Zakuma, they will tell you that it's on par or even better in terms of wildlife.
Yeah, thanks.
It is 2 hours closer to Europe.
Yeah.
You have Benin also trying the same thing
So they can
with
be
African
quick.
parks.
Yeah.
You have the Gambia that is setting up the Big Five.
Yeah.
The Gambia is 6 hours closer to the States than
Interesting.
East Africa
Interesting.
or than the Southern Africa.
Mm.
So actually, those are very far behind. They are like 10 steps behind in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
infrastructure and safety and all of it.
Okay.
But I think there's
Okay.
there's opportunities, but there's threats and things to watch from the MARA and the Serengeti side. So they need to reinvent and be dynamic.
Thank you. Thank you, Hube. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish we had 30 more minutes, but we have exceeded time. My apologies to the organizers, but I hope you guys had fun. Thank you very much to all my panelists, and I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.